Hello, everyone, and welcome to our last webinar of the year. Our subject of the day is securing your AI agents and data. This will be the last webinar of our Agentic AI series. I'm Andreas Abitalil, Partner and Program Manager at Ampio Solutions, and your moderator for the day. Before I hand you to today's presenters, I'd like to mention our rules of engagement. This webinar is recorded and will be available on demand. Please reach out to your partner or direct contact on the team to gain access to it. For questions, leverage the Q&A feature in your top toolbar. We will dedicate time at the end of the webinar to answer them. Our featured speakers for today are Joseph Calaf, the President of Ampio Solution, and Eli Karkafi, Senior Solution Architect and Microsoft Security MVP. Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending the last webinar of the year. This is as Andreas mentioned, the last in the series of AI. And what we're going to talk about today is securing your AI agents. So while the presentation is going to talk about AI, but the specificity here is the agents themselves and how do we secure them, or how should customers approach securing these agents and the data that these agents are looking at and learning from. So the AI agents, as I mentioned here, are independent of you and dependent on your data. I was having dinner with a customer not long ago, and it's a long-running customer of ours, and their chief people officer was in the meeting, and she said something to me that was actually extremely enlightening. She said that they are now treating agents as human resources, meaning when they build an agent, they have that agent show up in the org chart of the company. They are treating that as an individual that has to be reviewed, that has to be giving a performance metric, and that has to be treated as another human resource that is doing an individual's job. So this is why I say an agent is independent of you, because an agent is just somebody that is your peer, that is doing a human role. But just like all of us as power users or information workers, we can't make decisions and do our job if we don't have access to data. Same for the agent. And based on our role, there's a lot of data we should not have access to, and the same goes for the agent. If the agent is given access to that data, the agent will regurgitate that data and share that data with whomever is interfacing with it or interacting with it. So what is an agent, an AI agent? By definition, we're talking about an autonomous individual that is a robotic individual, if you will, or it's an autonomous artifact. It's an independent learner. It learns on its own. And actually, it's an independent decision maker too, because when you prompt it and interface with it, it's going to come back with information. It's making decisions for you. Of course, when you're interfacing with it, if it is a traditional agent that does prompting, then you could be the final decision maker. But a lot of agents that we're building out for our customers actually go to the final step and make the decision and execute upon that decision. If you think, for example, 2 webinars ago, we showed an agent that handles accounting for us. That agent is actually making a final decision on what is right and what is wrong between our, for example, expenditure statements and our credit card statements, or our OPEX statements from our financials. So it is important to remember that some agents being built today do become your final decision maker. The agents are obviously learning from data. For the agents to be intelligent enough, they need large data sets. This is where the complexity comes in. This is where security becomes important. The larger the data set, the more complexity about who has access to it and who doesn't have access to it. And the one thing that we always have to remember and we'll get to that in a few slides from here, is that that data, I use the term stocked, because when you give an agent access to data, as that data evolves and upgrades and updates, that agent is continuously learning. So securing the agent and securing data access by that agent is not a one-time deal. It has to be repetitive, and it has to be continuous monitoring and continuous improvement and continuous reviews of the data that that agent has access to. The issues with not doing that could potentially be unintentional leaks. And a leak is potentially, we'd like to call it, I call it also insider risk. The agent could leak the data, right? If not intentionally, but it's unintentional. If you give the agent access to that data, the agent doesn't know who that data should be shared with. So they're just going to share it because they have that knowledge, they have that information. And not securing agents also makes them vulnerable to attack risks. An agent not being secured could potentially be manipulated and attacked by outsiders to make it work for them instead of work for you. And as far as regulatory compliance is concerned, when it comes to regulations, it makes it a little more complex because you have to get granular with an agent. So securing an agent isn't just a one-stop shop, one click away. You have to be granular with it. And then the problem with the agent, again, going back to insider risk, is that if an agent doesn't know whom it should share that information with, if you don't secure it properly, that agent can take information that is confidential and share it with somebody within the company that should not have access to that information. So you could almost view an agent as a middleman between two individuals in an organization, of which one shouldn't have access to the information and one has access to the information, and the agent is just transferring that information from A to B with reckless abandon and without understanding the fact that this individual should not know that information. That's why it's very important to treat that agent as a resource within your organization and understand what and educate them on what they should be sharing and what they should not be sharing. So why does it matter? As we build agents, we are, for lack of a better term, hiring more technology objects to do work for us, right? If the agent is making the decision, we have to be very careful. If the agent isn't making the decision, but is just interfacing and interacting with us, it's very impactful because the agent influences our decisions. So an executive or any resource within your organization that is interfacing with an agent is making decisions based on what that agent is telling them, what that agent is informing them to do, or the data that it's giving back to them, right? It's not any different than when you're asking any agents out there about, tell me this or tell me that. Well, it's throwing back information at you, and you're making decisions based on that information. If that information isn't accurate, or if that information is more information that you should have received, then you're making decisions based on information that you shouldn't have or you should have. And that's why it's very impactful to ensure that these agents are secured. Breaches, we're starting to see more and more scenarios where, malicious actors are now actually manipulating agents to work for them instead of working for you. So you have to be very careful. It's like an individual, a malicious actor going in to one of your employees and asking them questions about confidential information that you should not have shared with them. What was your net profit this year? What is your revenue? If you're a private company, you shouldn't be sharing that information with maybe your competitor or your neighbor who works for a competitor. Malicious actors are doing that right now to agents. They're manipulating agents to have those agents give them information that they should not have. That's why it's very, very important to secure those agents, especially in sectors that are regulated like healthcare, where you have a lot of HIPAA regulations, finance, where you have SEC and FINRA regulatory requirements. Those could actually turn into a very, very large liability. Privacy is another one. AI training requires sensitive data. So as you're training your AI large language models, and then those agents are actually leveraging those large language models to act and respond and behave and provide data. It's very important that you are being careful about the privacy. How much of that information that the agent is displaying should be private, right? One of the issues with privacy that is very complex today is, and we'll get to this in a little bit, is when we talk about, redactation and obfuscation, which is maybe the agent should have access to data, but not the full subset of that data. So the example I would give you, maybe an agent should know the first and last name of an individual, but should not know their social security number. Well, if that information is in a single record or is in a single object, how do we obfuscate or how do we redact and anonymize that information by saying, hey, agent, if you're asking me who's got this, I'm going to tell you that these three individuals do, but because you're not allowed to see their social security numbers, I am going to obfuscate that. I'm going to anonymize that data for you, or do something that gives you only a subset of that information. That privacy makes it very complex, and it's very important to ensure that you are actually paying close attention to when you're securing your data about how much data you give that agent and what pieces of data within a larger set are you providing. And then finally, trust, right? I mean, at the end of the day, and we saw this, we're starting to see this year, and I think it's going to be even more meaningful next year and beyond, which is, okay, AI was the big buzz and all the rage in 2025. But if the decision makers that are investing in that don't trust it anymore, they're just not going to use it. They're going to walk away from it. And it would be a shame to have AI go by the wayside because it was deployed without thought. It was pushed out there without planning. It is a very, very powerful tool, but you have to do the right thing and build the foundational requirements to make sure that it's a tool that all of the users and everybody that is working with it can trust it. So what are the three types or the four types of threats that we're seeing, right? We're seeing and some of these are just really new. We're starting to see them come up. Adversarial is one, which is adversarial attacks are a way to manipulate the input to deceive the AI models. So that happens with agents more often. So you're manipulating the agent, just like as you manipulate an individual, right? I'm not a psychologist, but you're doing the same thing with an agent to be able to have that, to make that agent tell you things or do things that it should not be doing. If your agent is not secure and isn't smart enough, it could be easily manipulated, and it could provide data and interface and interact with people it shouldn't be doing that with. Data poisoning, we're starting to see that. This is less of an agent issue and more of a data issue. If you poison the data, if you inject harmful data into the AI training sets, what you're going to get poison in is poison out. So then you're compromising the reliability of the model. Thus, you're compromising the role that the agent is playing, and you're making them, for lack of a better term, do a bad job, right? Deliver wrong information, make wrong decisions. So it's very important that data at the foundational level is protected, and you are completely careful about ensuring that nobody could come in and poison your data. So model inversion is another one. And what model inversion is, we're starting to see ways of hackers reconstruct some of these AI models, right? So what they do is they also, again, instead of poison the data, they manipulate the data at the data level. And thus, they reconstruct it to make the agent, to fool the agent into thinking things that it shouldn't be thinking, and responding and making decisions in a very, very, inverted way, a reverse way, making exactly the opposite decision. If the decision should be down, it'll make a decision to send things up, right? And that is a very risky thing that you have to be careful about, right? And finally, your traditional threats, right? This is foundational. This is AI systems, all agents are vulnerable to unauthorized access, right? At the end of the day, who is allowed to talk to an agent, right? Who is allowed to access the agent? This is very foundational, and this is something we talked about last, a few series ago when it comes to security. Something we will always talk about, and it's something that's very simple when it comes to how we provide access to these agents. It's almost, think of it as virtual access versus physical access. There's a key card that everybody needs to go into the building of a corporation, because you don't want anybody walking in there and stealing stuff. It's the same for agents. Nobody should be able to walk into a platform or any sort of virtual room and then start interfacing and interacting with the agent. So traditional threats are your traditional access. You have to lock these down. So what is the strategy, right? How do you do this? So we're not going to go into technical details here. What we're going to talk about is high level methodologies on how to do this. Access, very straightforward. We've talked about this time and again. It's authentication and authorization. You authenticate, you authorize, you know who's coming in, you know who's going out. You always have an understanding of who's in the building and who's in the room, right? Encryption, this is probably, we could think of it today as pretty standard. Encryption at rest and encryption in transit. Most platforms offer that. If you're a Microsoft 365 customer, for example, and you're using Copilot as your AI, large language model, you could rest assured that your data is encrypted at rest. You could rest assured that your data is encrypted in transit. And this is very important. If you are investing or considering AI engines that are going to go learn from data that's not encrypted and it's not, communicating over encrypted channels, you better be careful. That is very dangerous. Encryption is very foundational to your data and to the communication channels between agents and large language models and your storage or, your rest. Training. So adversarial training, this is really defending against malicious attacks. This is really ensuring that your large language model isn't being compromised and your data isn't being compromised, right? Because if either one is being compromised, then it's getting trained on doing the wrong things. It's the wrong form of learning. So this is really simple in the fact that, for example, the example I would give you is if you are on the Microsoft 365 platform, obviously we know that the large language model, Copilot, for example, in this case, is being secured by Microsoft. Nobody is going to have access to that LLM. We know that Microsoft takes care of that security. Your data is your responsibility. The large language model is trusting you to give it access to the data that it should have access to. If you don't want it to have access to certain data, it's your responsibility, right? So that training is your responsibility. You are responsible for locking down access to some data. You're also responsible for locking down access as far as resources are concerned between who gets what information when they're interfacing with an agent or they're working with an agent. And then finally, remember, this is not a one-time deal. We always used to say, we still do say, that security isn't a product, it's a process. The strategy is the same here. There is no product that's going to be a single-click strategy. You need to do continuous monitoring. You need to do continuous alerting. As long as you have a large language model in place, you have to have tools in place to ensure that you're monitoring and alerting when you see suspicious activity, when you see vulnerabilities, when maybe you run into something that is nefarious, you have to be able to mitigate. So while AI provides a lot of opportunity to simplify our life, it also provides the opportunity to be a disruptor the wrong way. So we have to be careful about this, and we have to continuously be able to monitor that. So safeguards: encrypt data at rest, encrypt data in transit, strict access and control access and authorization. Obviously, if you're an M365, half of this is already done for you. The other half is framework that you have to invest in. Anonymization and privacy. So you have to anonymize your data. There are certain Azure products that are being offered where it allows for the anonymization of data. This is actually becoming more and more relevant in the healthcare industry. Backup and integrity, right? So ensure that you are maintaining secure backups and make sure that you regularly perform data integrity checks to prevent data loss and detect corruption. DLP is a huge part of this, right? And then finally, regulatory compliance, right? So make sure that you also always consider that when you are working on in AI. If you are in the European Union, you have to be careful about GDPR. If you are here, you have HIPAA, you have all kinds of regulatory requirements that you have to be careful about. Focus on those specifically because those are actually deltas from your traditional security issues. They introduce yet another layer that you have to be careful about. So foundational, those are things you have to do before you get going. If you haven't done them, I strongly recommend you do them now. Encryption, M365, we talked about that. Access control, Entra ID, and the Defender Suite and the Microsoft Security Stack. This is what we do. This is foundational. You have to consider that. And then, when it comes to personal identifiable information and other sensitive information, the foundational products that we talk about are going to be Purview, Defender, some of the new Azure services that are being provided. This is all foundational work that you have to do today, and you have to consider today before you keep investing and you go any further, right? And then finally, baking in security, right? This is a process. This is the piece of the process, right? This is providing security throughout the life cycle. I'm going to give you an example. As you build agents, you don't just build agents to put them out there. There has to be a security review. It's not any different than creating a new application. When you create a new application, a secure application is important. You have to have a security review for that application. You have to embed and inject security throughout the life cycle of your development world when it comes to agents, right? You have to do secure coding and data validation. So you have to inject that in your life cycle also. When I build an agent, you have to test it and understand what data is it accessing and put it through the ringer from a testing perspective. You have to review compliance every time you build an agent, and you have to also build a proactive risk management process for that agent specifically, because every agent is going to perform a different task, is going to have a different purpose. So ensure that for every agent that you build, you are embedding proactive risk management processes for that specific agent. It's really, you are onboarding a new resource onto your organization. They have to fit within a model, but they also have to be vetted specifically, right? You have to do background checks on that specifically, and you have to build a review model for them specifically and provide them feedback specifically. So this is a process that you have to do time and again, and it's not a one-time deal. Always think through that as you're building agents. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Elie for a little bit, just to talk for maybe a minute or two about, if I go back to the last slide, about a few of the products that we are invested in on the Microsoft world that we use today to ensure that you are securing your agents and working on that. Elie, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. So, since the agents and the AI landscape is increasing um, in a like a good way, but at the same time, there is a lot of threats coming in to that landscape when it comes to using the AI or leveraging any learning machine. And for that purpose, Microsoft has just introduced a couple of new products that let you discover and secure all your AI activities, such as in Microsoft Copilot, all the agents that your developer are building, whether using Copilot for Studio or any other AI development tools, and other AI apps like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Google, and other stuff. So one of the products that we're talking here about, one of the family in Purview is Data Security Posture Management for AI. And it is a tool within Purview that helps you monitor and keep your data safe when it comes interacting with AI apps. So basically, it will allows you to get insights into the user interaction that the end user are doing with the Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT and with any other AI agent. Also, it will allow you to put in a place set of DLP policies and inside risk management policies that would detect risky user activity and get insight into the user interaction and allows you also to put action. So let's say if someone is sharing his maybe credit card number or social security number with that AI app, you can stop this prompt from being happened in your environment, whether it's doing it from MC65 or other AI chat. Also, it allows you to discover all the sensitive data that has been set or has been input to that AI, asking question about maybe a topic that have conflict of interest with your business, let's say. And actually, the DSPM for AI is a combination of inside risk management policies, privacy risk management policies, because a lot of people like to share personal information with Copilot asking question or other any AI apps, and also communication policies. So, for example, one of the employees, maybe he shared a confidential PDF file from the corp with that AI. You can know about that activity and you can block it using the SPM for AI. And when it comes also for the people or the developers in your environment that are using Copilot for Studio to build AI agents, you can also control all their activities using Defender for Cloud Apps. As well. And when it comes to creating Azure resources like OpenAI, Azure resources, and all the stuff, or even if you are building AIs and you're passing through the DevOps process by ingesting codes and all the stuff, you can use Defender for Cloud also to monitor and scan the code that you are pulling up into your agent, whether through Copilot for Studio or any other development tool, and get an insight about all the critical or severity of codes or data that those developers are dealing with the agent that they are developing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe and Ali, for the presentation. To close out this webinar, does anybody have any questions? If yes, please insert them in the Q&A feature on your top toolbar. The first question we have, what if employees are already using AI tools unofficially? What do you recommend?
My recommendation is to go back to the foundational piece and start locking it down. You need a data strategy. So a readiness exercise. It's fine for users to use AI today, but you have to go back to the foundation and start locking down that data, or else they're just going to continue to have a just unfettered access to data, which is not a good thing.
Yeah, I will add to that, like as first step to start getting insight of what type of application those users are using from AI perspective, like ChatGPT, you can start leveraging or implementing Defender for Cloud Apps. It will give you a complete inventory and discovery of the AI apps usage in your environment, in your code. And then inside that Defender for Cloud Apps, you can sanction or unsanction those applications at first, and later on you upscale your insight by leveraging Microsoft Purview, DSPM for AI, to know in deep what type of interaction they are doing with those AI agents or application. And from there, you can start doing data compliance and taking actions accordingly.
All right. The second question, if an AI-related data incident happened tomorrow, how would you investigate? What data was assessed and by whom?
Yeah, so basically, whenever you put the SPM AI solution in place, which is a set of policies by data loss prevention and insight risk management, you will get insights about everything that user is interacting with any AI app, what type of applications or what type of data he shared with that AI app, what type of data he uploaded to that AI app, what type of prompts he input in the chat of that AI app. And based on those data, you gather them all in one investigation, you create a case, and from there, you know what are the gaps to prevent such incident in the future by fine-tuning your DLP policies or purview policies in general to prevent those actions.
That's why it's important to have the AI deployed correctly in your environment so you can monitor it well and make sure that you don't face those issues.
Yeah, that's correct. So when we say AI, it's important to have an environment. Here we are talking about, for example, Security for Copilot, which help you facilitate and summarize the incident once it's happened. Because, you know, at the end of the day, Purview sent all the signals and correlate everything to XDR, where XDR deal with Security Copilot to summarize the incident and give you a recommendation, and it will help you and facilitate the triage of the incident by giving you recommendation of what are your next step in solving that incident. And it's based also on some threat intelligence data that come up from researchers from all over the world to know like if they have something similar that happened in another organization and how to deal with it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ali and Joe. At the start of 2026, we're going in our data series. We will be discussing data platforming, analytics, and more. Please stay tuned and be on the lookout for our emails sharing information about those webinars. Thank you for joining us. Have a good end of year. Bye.